money isn't the only kind of currency. Sometimes attention, sympathy, and status are worth just as much. Nobody knew that better than Tania Head, who became one of the most famous survivors of the terror attacks on 9/11, except for one small problem. She wasn't there. So, why do people invent lies this big, especially when there's no big paycheck at the end? What's the real payoff for a con built on pure fiction? You're listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachael and Roxanne.
Hi, Rachel. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Roxanne?
Excited. I'm excited. Listeners, this is the first episode that I have been able to pick the documentary as opposed to Rachel. And it's not that she was forbidding me to ever do that. It's that my life was a living hell. And I had seen this documentary a couple of times. One of my former students, actually told me about it. And I watched it, and then I watched it again, and then I realized, wait a minute, maybe this would be a good documentary for us to talk about, and Rachel agreed, yay. So much weirdness. So much weirdness.
Yeah, this was such a strange situation. And I kept getting like little flashbacks to other documentaries we've watched, like Sour Grapes and Rudy, and like kind of going through and thinking about some of the other things we've seen and how it all kind of ties together in these weird ways. This was definitely a weird one. And it was the documentary is called The Woman Who Wasn't There. And it is about a woman named Tania Head who basically pretended to be a survivor of 9/11 and ended up getting caught. It was a whole deal. And they made this documentary about her situation because it was so surreal. And this was made in 2012. And so it looks like in 2012, 73 people were killed in Egypt during a football game fan riot. Hurricane Sandy decimated the east coast of the United States and the Caribbean, killing more than 500 people and causing $68 billion in damage. I remember Hurricane Sandy.
I was in Hurricane Sandy because I lived on the Jersey Shore.
Yeah, well, we were in it too. We were living in New York City at the time.
Oh, sure. That's right. You were in New York then. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and my husband had literally had hernia surgery the day before the hurricane landed. And so he was able to just lay there in bed and be like comfortable and fine. He didn't have to get up and do anything. So it worked out really well for us. But yeah, Hurricane Sandy did not work out very well for most other people.
Yeah.
That was also the year that 12 people were killed and 58 people were injured in a mass shooting at a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, at the screening of The Dark Knight Rises. And an Austrian skydiver, Felix Baumgartner, becomes the first person to break the sound barrier without a plane with a record space dive out of a helium balloon at 24 miles in the air because he is insane.
Yes. Yes. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah. Like, I don't even like being on top of a ladder. I can't imagine.
No, me either. Oh my God. That's why I won't go on like free fall and things like that. I'm just terrified of it. But no, this nut job went up there and just jumped out of the plane at 24 miles. Oh my God.
And that was Queen Elizabeth II's 60th year on the throne.
Yeah, celebrating the Jubilee.
So yeah, in the midst of all of this in 2012, Meredith Vieira co-produced this documentary about this woman who, for most of the documentary, you know her as Tania. Towards the end, we find out that's not her name.
No.
But after the 9/11 terror attacks, she came to New York and created this story around why she was there and how she was there. Roxanne, do you want to tell us a little bit about Tania and her fiance, Dave?
Oh, sure. Okay, well, so Tania Head, real name is Alicia Estevez, and she was actually in her home country of Spain when 9/11 happened. So she wasn't even in the United States, let alone in New York. Her story was that she worked at Merrill Lynch in one of the towers and that her fiance, Dave worked in the other tower. So Dave's tower was the first to go down, and Tanya's allegedly was the second to go down. And she assumed that Dave was killed because there was no, they didn't find a body. He was among the missing. And then the story started to get weird. In some versions of her story, Dave was not just her fiance, he was her husband. And this very diligent reporter went through copious records of who was employed and who showed up to work that day. And it turns out that Tanya only like briefly knew him in passing. They certainly didn't have a relationship. They didn't even have a friendship. She just picked him and focused on him. And Tanya then claimed that a fire that she was thrown backwards by the explosion, by the backdraft. Her back and upper arm caught on fire, and she claimed that her arm was almost ripped off entirely and that it was hanging by like two tendons or something like that. And then she said that a firefighter wearing a red bandana, and we know he's real, his name is Wells Crowley or Crowtherd, carried her out. And that's how the weird lie began. But yeah, Dave did exist, but he had no communication with Tanya. They certainly weren't engaged, and they certainly weren't married.
Well, and she told this elaborate story about her fiance Dave, who was in the other tower, and about how he had proposed. And she told the story of how he spread rose petals through the house, and then she went into the dining room and he had prepared this terrible Hawaiian food because he can't cook. But he had set it all up that he was gonna take her to Hawaii and they were gonna get married. And she told the story of how they got married on the beach in Maui and it was just their close friends, but they didn't have a wedding certificate. They were just doing like the ceremony. She's got these details about, getting married in a circle of white orchids on the beach in Maui. And it sounds, when you're listening to her, lovely and beautiful and so tragic. But as they go through this documentary, she's just making it up. And one of the gentlemen who was in this documentary, Jerry, talks
Yeah.
about at one point that she was the best liar he had ever seen in his entire life. She had an ability to stick to a story in a way most liars never could. And then
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, her memory for her lie was fantastic. Yeah, and I'm sure that she got that whole scenario of the Hawaiian shirt and the petals and that's got to be from some rom-com. Yeah, she probably stole that from a Harlequin romance or something stupid like that.
well, she's
Absolutely.
been dreaming about it since she was a kid, and that's what she's designed.
Sure.
Like, this came from somewhere, but not her life.
No, certainly not.
But when they started talking to some of the survivors, Tanya had like shown up and said she was in the towers and she was rescued by this fireman, and she's got scars all up and down her back and up her arm where it looks like her injuries are very real. Nobody would have any reason to doubt her story. Um and everybody just kind of goes with it. They're like, "Oh, she's my best friend. She's here. She's great. We're loving spending this time together and we're doing all this wonderful stuff." Um but she gave a lot more detail than most of the other survivors.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, most of the real survivors, they have such PTSD that they don't really remember a lot of it. That I've watched a lot of survivor videos, and they're like, there was explosion, there was a flashlight, and suddenly I'm laying down on the floor or somebody's carrying me, and they just don't remember. But Tanya, man, she had every single detail, and her injuries were real. It's just that she did not obtain them on 9/11. She obtained them from a car crash in Spain years previously. And I'm sure everybody can tell the difference between, years old third-degree burn scars and last week.
Yeah. And So she's built up this story, she's built this community of people who all believe her, and she's not taking any money for this. Like, she's not here to get paid. She's
Right.
here to build a community with people based on something that she was not a part of.
Right.
And she like takes leadership roles within this community. She becomes the president of the World Trade Center survivors group,
Network.
and
Yeah.
she's like leading tours with Rudy Giuliani and these other people. Like, she's really ingratiated herself into this group and made herself a part of it in a way that you you would not expect somebody to do if they were not a part of the actual tragedy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, she had her name on the stationery, and she finagled it. When the World Trade Center Survivors Network started, there were no leadership positions. There was no president or vice president or anything like that. It was just a group of people of equal pull, trying to help each other heal, which is fantastic. But once Tanya got involved, suddenly there were offices, there was a president, and she always seemed to be where the reporters were, miraculously. But yet she played up this whole, I'm shy, don't interview me in public. Now, of course, we know that she realized the more people that heard her lie, the more likely it is that somebody was going to eventually go, wait, what? The math doesn't math.
Yeah. Um, and as she's getting more and more into this lie, the longer this goes on, and this is years. They don't find
Yeah.
until like 2006. So
Yeah.
she's into this for years and years and years, and the more she digs herself into this world, into this lie, into this community, the more her story starts to kind of come apart. She won't talk to the fireman who rescued her. He wants to meet with her, as a let's talk to each other about our shared experience and let's heal together and stuff. And she won't do that. She sets up an appointment and then says no. And she says, well, I'll meet with you, but only like very, very, privately. I don't want anybody else there. And then she reneges on that. And then,
Mhm.
reporters start coming to, write 5-year anniversary stories and 6-year
Sure.
anniversary
Yep.
survivor stories. And she doesn't want any part of that. She's very heavily avoiding those things. And her story about her life starts to flip flop back and forth. Dave was her fiance, but no, they were married on this beach in Maui, but it wasn't really a marriage. And then a judge married them posthumously. So she became a widow after he was already dead. And like on and on and on this goes. And as people are listening, they're starting to be like, okay, you said you have a dog. Where is this dog?
Yes, she had this weird lie that she owned this little dog named Elvis, and she wouldn't shut up about Elvis. And finally, whenever one of her friends would come over, let me see Elvis. I want to play with Elvis. Oh well, the dog walker has him now. So and this happened constantly at any time of day. So Elvis was like the most well exercised dog in the state of New York. I just yeah, absolutely. So but again, and this goes to pathological lying, there was no reason for her to lie about that. Generally, people who aren't pathological liars, they only lie for two reasons: to prevent them from getting into trouble, or to prevent someone else from getting into trouble that they love. They don't sit and daydream up a dog, because what would you have to gain from that?
Yeah.
It's weird.
And as she's going through this, I am shocked. Like, at every moment of this documentary, because I'm waiting for them to be like, and then she took the $100,000 survivor check and disappeared or whatever. But no, there was nothing. She got no money. She wasn't getting like medical care or anything that they indicated as a survivor of 9/11. And
Right.
even if she had wanted to, those funds were very limited and were typically going to like firefighters and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so there's no incentive for her to do this that is obvious to anybody because she had to fly to the United States to do this. She had to plan this out in such a way that she left her home country to come here and commit this fraud.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just picturing that. She's in Spain, she's watching the news, she learns about that, and the first thing she thinks of is, "I gotta get me some of that." And gets on a plane and flies to New York City. Where she has no apartment. Well, we're getting to that, her little fake digs. She doesn't know anybody. She doesn't have a job. She just shows up. And of course, when they went through the Merrill Lynch employee roster, she was not listed. She didn't work at Merrill Lynch, obviously.
Yeah, this is the more that I think about this, the more I think about are you familiar with the story of Belle Gibson, who was a
I don't know who that is.
she was a scammer in Australia who accidentally lied herself into the public sphere and created like phone apps and cookbooks and all this stuff because she told this story online about how she had cancer and her doctors had given her like 3 weeks to live or like 3 months to live or something. And so she decided she was going to get rid of chemo. She was going to turn away medicine and she was going to rely on food and diet to heal herself. And her brain tumor went away because she drank celery juice. And like, so she makes up this story, but I feel like there, up until the point where Belle Gibson started cashing in on that, I feel like these were almost parallel stories. And
I never heard of this. I must look this up. Oh my God.
oh yeah, you should. It's there's a maintenance phase podcast episode about it, and it'll knock the brain right out of your head just to listen to all this stuff this one.
Oh my God. Wow. But at least she had a motive. At least she knew there was something to gain from this.
Well, see,
Tanya Head
I
did
don't know
not.
that she started with that motive. I think she and Tanya and other people who do this kind of thing start from attention. They want people
Yeah.
to lavish love and attention on them. And if I were to guess, like they talked to a bunch of family and friends of Tanya in Spain who all seemed to think that she was lovely and vivacious and the life of the party and all of this stuff. They had no idea why she would do this. But my guess is that she felt very unloved and like nobody ever really paid any attention to her and that this was a
Right.
disaster where you really couldn't track down who was involved with what, and that she could just throw herself out there and develop these friends and like this build this relationships with people out of this tragedy, even though she wasn't a part of it. I think she just wanted to try to build that community, was at least the
Or maybe
impression that
she
I
wanted
got.
a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Because when they interviewed one of her childhood friends from Spain, the friend said that she always had low self-esteem because she didn't consider herself conventionally attractive. And so she was kind of like the wallflower and she would hide and things like that. But everybody also said that once she came out of her shell, she was funny, vivacious, certainly intelligent, and well spoken. Um, but instead and she could have easily capitalized on those things and not have to make up the fiance. That's another weird thing. It's bad enough saying that you were part of the worst tragedy in America since 1941, and then another step and make up a fiance of somebody that she maybe passed at the water cooler 2 or 3 times. You know,
Yeah, I feel like there is something in people who lie like this, who it's not just the attention. They want that, oh my God, you've been through so much. Let me care about you. Let me do. And they want a lie big enough that nobody would dare claim they were lying. Like,
yeah.
so with Belle Gibson, she's got brain tumors. With Tanya, her fiance died in the towers and she was rescued by a firefighter. You would not dare if somebody was just talking to you and they said, "Yeah, I'm a survivor of 9/11. I was in one of the towers." You would never be like, "Bullshit. Which tower? What floor were you on?" Like,
Exactly. My first thing would be, "Oh my God, are you okay? Do you feel like talking about it? If not, no problem. If you do, call me anytime." Yeah, of
yeah.
course,
So she
certainly.
needed a lie big enough and severe enough that you would be an asshole if
Yeah,
you pushed back on it. You would be ashamed of yourself if you pushed back on somebody who told you this story.
right.
And so I feel like that's what she was doing, and apparently this is actually, big fucking thing that happens. Like, I don't know, last year in Hurricane Helene, there was a press release from U.S. Attorney Hairston cautioning against disaster fraud. And apparently, there are over 200,000 examples of disaster fraud complaints submitted in the state of North Carolina after hurricanes and natural disasters and things like this.
Right.
People come out
Right.
and they are lying out the woodwork. And most of that, I would assume, is, oh, I can get a new deck, or oh, they'll write me a check.
And so now they're saying, "Oh, this way I can get a fancy new carport."
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a bunch of it's going to be that, but some of it is soliciting victims to invest in businesses that offer recovery efforts for cleanup and rebuilding. Some of it is impersonating insurance providers to request money and personal identifiers so you can steal somebody's ID. Some of it is impersonating government officials, and some of it is like overcharging for goods and services, and price gouging in the aftermath of the disaster. Like, there's a bunch of different ways that you.
Wow, it would take me a year to play count the felonies with this particular incident. Holy shit.
Yeah. And so when you when you're looking at this kind of stuff, there's clearly, even if it's just in the state of North Carolina, there's been over 200,000 disaster fraud complaints. You magnify out, that's many millions of cases across the United States
Yeah.
of just fraudulent disaster stuff. And part of that, I think, in our sense, is that America is set up so that it holds you down. Like, you can't, we're not going to raise minimum wage. We're going to raise the price of your rent 3 times, and we're going to do like all of this. You have to be poor. And if you fight back, we're going to harm you for it. So when something
Yeah.
like this happens and Americans see an opportunity, I understand where some of them would be like, this is the only shot I've got. So I got to take it. I am shocked that somebody from a nation with universal health care and social safety nets and like her
Yeah.
family and friends, like that
I
is
mean,
something that makes this weird to me.
the other weird thing about Tanya is she wasn't even interested in joining the battalion of class action lawsuits that came out after in the couple months after 9/11. I remember very clearly, sitting at home and the footage, blah 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 blah, and every other commercial was for some lawyer who was like, "Were you injured in 9/11? Do you have smoke inhalation? Do you have mesothelioma because of the smoke? Check yourself all over. Are you sure you don't have smoke inhalation?" And we're setting up where you can get tens of thousands of dollars, and she never made, she never pressed it. She didn't want that. She wanted the attention. She wanted to feel important, but she started to panic when the New York Times reporter called her up, said some of the things aren't matching up. Can we talk?
Yeah. Um, and I was really like angry when her childhood friend was like, well, she was always heavy, and so she had low self-esteem because she was fat. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but as a fat person myself, I am a card-carrying member of the Fat People Society. Like, th-
People Society.
this is not.
Does that mean that I'm in the Friends of Fat People Society?
Yes.
If I keep eating the way I am, I'm going to be right up there. But yeah, I mean, but you also have to remember, Rachel, in Europe, there is no fat acceptance. It's
That's
it's
true.
models.
Like,
Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s as a fat person. I was fat even as elementary school and middle school. I was still fat. And so I grew up with that oppressive, like, you better look like Britney Spears, but not too much because she's too fat. You better be thinner than Britney Spears. And like, I had people
God.
follow me into dressing rooms and not let me try on things at the stores.
Oh,
And I've had like, I have dealt with some backlash based on my weight and my size. And I've never at any point have I been like, you know what? I'm going to make this the world's problem by lying about. I am taken aback by the justification. Well, maybe she did it because she felt sad about her body. Maybe she did it because she didn't have much self esteem. Yeah, no, I think it takes self-esteem aplenty to be able to run a con like this.
I it's just and I'm in just picture I mean, how does that idea even germinate? I mean, you and I see natural disasters and horrible things all over the world. Did you ever think I'm going to go to Ecuador and get in on that earthquake action? Doesn't occur to normal people.
No, and even like I said, we were in Hurricane Sandy. Even like 2 years ago, there was a hurricane that came up this pretty far up into New England, and it destroyed piece that we had in our yard. We had like a awning, kind of not like an awning, but like a
An overhang, like for the car.
oh, more like a why is the word not wording in my brain? Like um like a tent, like a big tent covering so that you could sit underneath it in the yard. It was just the roof and it, no walls or
Oh,
anything.
okay, I know what you mean. It's like
Yeah,
one of the sundowner awnings, only it freestanding, like a
freestanding, yeah.
gazebo.
And
Okay.
that thing got destroyed. And at no point was I like, I should call my insurance about this. I was like, I should throw that away and not get a cheap one next time. So, so even in natural disasters where I've had an opportunity to be like, oh, this bad thing happened, it would never occur to me to lie or commit fraud or try to do this sort of thing. And this woman just leaned hard into it. She was like, not only am I going to say I was at 9/11, I'm going to say I was in the tower and my fiance died. And like,
He died, and I got my arm was hanging by two tendons, and I mean, I'm when you talk about gaming the system with insurance, I'm thinking something my father always said before he retired. He was always saying to me and my mom, "If you find me dead, put my body in my work truck, because if I die on the job, I get double indemnity." Yes, that's the first thing I'm gonna do with my dead dad. Drag his body into the work truck, put a brick on the accelerator, and send him down the road. So I mean, of course he wasn't the same. Well, maybe he was. I don't know. My dad was kind of weird, but pretty much the same. Did the same thing. She had to capitalize at the highest level. And I even put in the notes, of course, her story has to be more tragic than anybody's you know? Oh,
yeah, this was just so strange. And like, as she's going through this process and she's talking to like lawyers trying to figure this out, and that's when her story really starts coming apart. A friend of hers goes with her to the lawyer, and the lawyer's like, it's okay that you were only in the tower for the day and that you didn't work there. And friend's like, excuse me? And like, he's going, it's
mhm,
okay that this thing that you don't remember the firefighter who helped you, or it's okay. Like, and her friend is like, no, 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 that's not okay. For 6 years,
mhm.
that's not the story you've been telling.
Yeah,
And
she couldn't even tell the truth to her lawyer. She dumbed it down a little, and the woman who took her there, her name was Linda, and she was like Tanya's BFF in the World Trade Center Survivors Network. And she was the most devastated. She really was because she had built this major sincere friendship with somebody based on their mutual survival of a terrible national tragedy. Um, and now Tanya, was pulling this, and it was sort of you're not in the club anymore, Tanya. This is a club for survivors. And, we heal each other by talking about the incident, what we've lost, how we're going to go forward. And you don't belong here anymore. And you took us all for a ride. I mean, you took the whole country for a ride. But I can imagine. I mean, I've never, thank God, been a victim of any natural disaster or anything involving a whole bunch of people. I would feel personally betrayed.
yes, absolutely. And the thing of it is, if she had wanted to come over here and build this community, she could have come over as a supporter. She could have come over and
Yeah.
worked with the networks that were helping these people and met them and befriended them and let them tell their stories and kind of built her way into this community of people in that way. And nobody would have judged her twice. If she came from another country out of the goodness of her heart to try to help and, repair the damage that was done and help the people, She would have been lauded for her entire life.
Certainly, she would be like, in Spain who care, and I'm an emissary of your friends in Spain. What can Spain do to help? What can I do to help? And then say, I cannot imagine what it's like to be you. I mean, in Hurricane Sandy, the secretary at Malast University lost her whole house. And I just said, Barbara, I'm so sorry. I said, I can only imagine what you feel. And then I turned around. I said, Barbara, no, I just lied to you. I can't imagine. I can't. And she was like, "Thank you, that's very kind," which shows what Tanya could have done. She could have easily said, I can't imagine. So let me help you. Let me call my people in Spain. Maybe they can get with other countries in Europe for aid. Oh my God. But no, she had to make it personal.
Yeah. And then the part that really like threw me back to sour grapes was it turns out this is just what her family does. Her dad and her brother were
What?
convicted of fraud in Spain because of course they were.
Because of course they were. The whole family's a bunch of grifters.
They were convicted of making fake payments to the Catalonian prime minister and like just this is clearly what she grew up in. You lie, you steal, you cheat, you skirt the system. And I don't know that like I will put 100% of that blame on her upbringing because like I am a perfect example of somebody who grew up one way and it's turned out very different than my whole family. She could have chosen not to be a grifter.
Yeah. That's true. That is always an option. Is just don't commit crime. Hey, it's real easy to not commit crime.
Oh hell, at least if you're gonna commit the crime, do it for the money. Like make it an understandable grift. Like I don't even know.
Go big or go home, I always say.
Like I don't know how was she paying her bills? Where was she living? Like there was no anything about she came here and she says she's working for Merrill Lynch, but clearly Merrill Lynch has never heard of her. How is she paying for this apartment and the plane and her food and her transportation? Where is it coming from?
It's not like she was well off in Spain. It's not like she was tapping an account, at the Bank of Madrid or something like that.
I mean, not that they ever indicated. It could be that she was grifting her landlord, and she was grifting like I'm sure it's
It's
possible.
entirely Rachel, it's entirely possible that she played it to the landlord and the landlord was like, "Oh God, you're a 9/11 survivor. I'm not charging you rent." Because I'm sure that was offered to, I'm sure a lot of the survivors legitimately were given breaks in rent and utilities. And I'm sure people brought her food and, community, the community. So I suspect that might be one reason that she was able to afford all that, that they were gifts.
Yeah, quite possibly. Or maybe she had her dad and her brother grifting and they were paying for her stuff while she was over here. Like, it could be any number of things except for
Hmm.
legitimate work. That it could not be. But
Right, right. Exactly.
it could be any number of things that she was using there to live her life in New York. And I mean, I know people who have managed to live in New York on a shoestring. Like it was possible, especially at that time. Uh,
Yeah.
but whew, like I just that's a lot. I have difficulty like maintaining that. Okay, I'm gonna pay this bill. I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna drive to the store. I can't imagine trying to
Yeah.
do all of that and grift an entire community.
Right, and keep the lies straight, certainly. And I mean, the parents of the firefighter that allegedly pulled her out, Wells Crowther, they kept desperately trying to meet with her because they wanted to talk about their son's last moments. Understandably so. And seeing a survivor that he rescued would give them so much peace, knowing that he didn't die in vain, but she just wouldn't.
Yeah.
She just wouldn't. So I was looking at the other lies Tanya told, making it even weirder. Okay. The details are beautiful here.
Mhm.
She claims she lost her wedding ring, convenient because she never had one to begin with, in the fire, and that Tiffany's gave her a new one. Wow. She also, what else did she claim? Oh, this is my favorite. Um, she claims that her brother's sister back in Spain had a baby on 9/11, and they named him Dave. And by far the most macabre is that she was going to offer the parents of the firefighter who allegedly saved her a piece of her burnt clothing from that day so they could put it in like a frame or something like that.
Well, and even if you wanted to keep those clothes, wouldn't you have like boxed that up and set it away for yourself? Or like, wouldn't you have? You can't really wash something like that once it's been damaged. It can't really.
No, not with fired. Yeah. And it turns out also that one of the reasons that she got caught to begin with is that people in Spain watch the news too. And a friend from Barcelona was watching the news one day and went, "Hey, that's Alicia Estevez. That's not, what is she calling herself? Tania Head?" I So, yeah, did she really think that she was going to be on international news, have footage of this worldwide, and not one person is going to like notice?
Yeah, when push came to shove and they really started questioning her story, she briefly spoke to a lawyer and then disappeared. No one
Yeah,
could find her as of the making of this documentary. Nobody had any clue where she was. As far as they knew, she could be dead. Um,
right.
but she wasn't, because guess who I found on the internet?
Oh my God, do tell.
So I found a story from El Mundo. And it's her, clear as day. It's a picture of her wearing a blue face mask in 2021 after the pandemic, where she has purchased a health company to administer COVID tests. So she saw another natural disaster, a huge thing that was impacting everybody's lives. And we're like, I can get in on that.
Oh my God, was she claiming to be a COVID survivor? And like she was on a respirator and was taking her last breath, but then Jesus came or
No,
wow.
she bought the company and she basically has at this point not been interacting with anybody. She has stayed out of the limelight. She's been in a small town outside of Barcelona called, let me pull it back up, Terrassa. It's a town of Terrassa, which is about 223,000 people, about 20 minutes outside of Barcelona. And she's been living there with her mother. And the reporters found her, and you can see it in her face. She's just like, motherfucker. And so they're like, can we talk about what happened? Do you want to apologize for what you did? And she's not answering any questions. She's not talking to anybody. And so they go and find the building that she bought, the company in the building that she bought, and they're talking to neighboring companies and people who work there. And they're like, yeah, she owns it, but she's never here. She has two employees who administer the COVID tests. And like, so,
Is she still going by Tanya Head?
no, she goes by Alicia Esteve Head.
Oh,
And
okay.
Head apparently is her mother's name. Acacia is what I'm guessing we pronounce that.
I
Acacia,
speak
Acacia.
French, I don't know.
Um, and she was a 80 at the time that they wrote this article in 2021. She was an 82-year-old British woman who was living in Spain because she had been there when she met her husband and had her kids and all of that. And
Mhm.
she's just living her life like with her mom, with her 82-year-old mom.
Oh my God. It's I just can't.
Yeah, and she's apparently had active job postings on the job board info jobs looking for people to come work for this company that she bought. And apparently in according to something called La Vanguardia, they published
Mhm.
in July of 2012 that she had been fired from the Barcelona-based company Interpartner So I don't know if she got that job after her scamming or if that was something she was doing distance while she was scamming people in the US.
Maybe her little grifting fingers reach far and wide.
But yeah, apparently she got fired from that job because of this documentary. Her bosses saw
Oh,
this
nobody
documentary.
knew who she was until, oh boy,
So
because
she
it
had
was so
gone back.
long ago, right?
Yeah, she had gone back and was like living in Spain, living her life, having a job. And then this documentary came out and she lost her job.
Mhm.
And so then dealing with kind of after this, like she, according to the newspaper, the La Vanguardia, when she was informed that she was being dismissed, she accused the company officials of being insensitive for firing a victim of international terrorism. So she is still maintaining the lie.
The balls on that woman. Wow.
But yeah, so like she's going through this whole thing, and it's cute. I can see the language difference back and forth between El Mundo and when you have Google translate it to English. Apparently they thought she worked at a company called Mary Lynch.
Oh no.
So it didn't translate exactly. Uh,
Right.
but like she and they in Spain they called the firefighter who rescued her, quote unquote, the hero of the red scarf because her whole thing was that he was wearing a red bandana and that's how
Red
she
bandana.
identified
Right.
him. And so they're kind of going into her whole story and how she's, still living this lie. Still.
She's completely deluded. Absolutely, completely filled with the delulu. I just, oh,
Yeah, just absolutely nuts. And the reporter like went to the building where she lived with her mother and knocked on the door and no one answered and he left a note with his phone number and she never called.
right.
And she just every time she sees somebody from the press, she runs away.
Yeah.
And I suppose what she did was technically fraud, but because she didn't profit from it, maybe
Hmm.
it's not like they're coming to arrest her.
Yeah. I mean, I, technically, I don't think it was a crime. She didn't, like you said, she didn't gain anything except fame. She wasn't paid for anything. She didn't write a book and capitalize on that. It was just this poor, this woman that was so starved for attention and adulation that, and I really don't think in the beginning when she first started this lie that she knew it was going to eventually snowball into this thing of astronomical proportions.
Yeah, I have to think she thought she was going to be one of 1,000 voices and that nobody was going to pick her out of the crowd. And that she was just going to kind of fall into this group and have her friends that were
Yeah.
shared this moment with her as far as they knew. And that she was just going to work with that.
Right.
And then they talked in the documentary about how she was the most ambitious, driven person that I don't think she could have held back and just be
Hmm.
like, I'm gonna be quiet back here with my story and let other people lead the tours and talk to the papers. And
Right. But no, that wasn't in her makeup. That's not in her psychological makeup.
no, not at all. Um, and yeah, I will say it took me by surprise seeing her in the face mask because when you Google Alicia Esteve Head, that's the picture that pops up. It is her.
That's amazing. Oh my God. I can't believe she's still out there doing this. Just
And
damn.
I don't know if her new business is a scam or if it's legit, if she was really trying to help people or if she or saw another disaster that she could profit off of this time or
Oh, I'm sure.
but I have no idea what's driving this woman and and her decision making.
No, nobody knows. Just,
But yeah, this was crazy to watch. And I guess that it is valuable to compare this to Sour Grapes with Rudy Carnawan, who fleeced billionaires. And so he had to pay back $28 million and is spending 10 years in jail. This lady didn't
Right.
steal anything from anybody. She just got to go back to Spain. So,
Right.
so if you're
Yeah.
going to commit a crime or do some weird, deceptive, fraudulent thing, don't take any money for it.
Right. Exactly. Go ahead, lie your head off, but don't make any kind of profit on it. And that's the moral of today's podcast.
But thank you for listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachel and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into disaster fraud and the documentary The Woman Who Wasn't There. Join us again next week for a glimpse into another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.
Bye for now.